We all know that it's a statement of truth when three witnesses agree. You know, we may have doubts at the beginning, and if somebody tells us something, we think, oh, gee, you know, it could be. But if somebody else comes along and says the same thing, well, gee, there must be something to it. What if a third person comes and tells you exactly the same thing? It becomes more believable, does it not? This morning's message is about making up our minds. It's about who to trust. It's about what to believe. It's about what we can count on as we go forward from one day to another to another. Now, the person who wrote this little letter, 1 John, he was addressing some very grave issues in the church. Because there were some teachers that come along and telling people, you know, this man, Jesus, he wasn't really human. He was a vision from God, like we've received visions before. But you know, he didn't really suffer the way we did. And that started to lead people away from the church. You know, they got confused because this teacher was saying things that sounded peculiar, but also things that went along with the popular culture. So John wrote this letter. He said, you know, you got to keep in mind the basic message and remember the things that happened. He said, we know that Jesus is the Christ, not only because somebody told us, but because he was baptized. You know, he was baptized just like it says in the scriptures, just like people have recognized in our religion for thousands of years. Jesus too was baptized in that way. You know, tradition says that he was the Christ. How else do we know that Jesus is the Christ? Well, we also know that he suffered. His ministry lasted about 3 years. And at the end of it, it was very gruesome. I mean, there was one glorious time when he was coming into town, riding on a donkey. Everybody went out to greet him, and they put down palm branches, and they praised him and sang his song all the way to town. It was a glorious day. But during that week, things switched around. And he was arrested, and he was tried, and he was beaten, and he was hung on a cross, and he died. His blood flowed from his side. And so the writer of this letter says, another witness that Jesus is Christ is his blood. You know? It was his suffering, it was his sacrifice that reminds us of that. So now you got two witnesses. You got tradition says he was baptized with water and all that which that means, and that he is the one. And we also have that he suffered. He really believed what he said. He staked his life on it. He bled from the cross. And that's testimony on his behalf too. Amen. But he also said, we have a third witness. A third witness indeed. And you know, that's the Spirit. You know, the Spirit that came after Jesus was taken into heaven. And his Spirit was on the heads of the people. It was like little flames on everybody's head. And they felt something. It was something inside. And they felt this excitement and new opportunity and wonderful things. And they couldn't say, boy, I don't know. I can't see it anywhere, but I can sure feel it.
Glory to God.
It's been my experience. And that testifies that Jesus is the Christ. And that's a glorious thing. You see, John Wesley had it right when he said there's 4 tests about whether something is true or not. He says, first you go to Scripture. If you read it in the Bible, it's likely to be true. We may not understand it at first, but if we pursue it, we'll understand it and we'll know it's to be true. He said the second one is tradition. He said, how has the church interpreted the Scripture through its history? And there's a whole history. And you know, history is wonderful. It's all kind of intrigue and all kinds of drama and all kinds of experience. And this is how people have interpreted through the years. He said the third thing is your experience of it. Have you known it in your own personal life? You read it in Scripture, the church says a certain thing about it. Have you experienced it that way? What does your gut tell you? There's your third witness. He said the fourth one is reason. You know, after you go through all that, read the Bible, after you study the history of the church and find out what the church says about your particular passage, and then after you experience it and have felt it, think about it. You know, it all makes sense in a certain way. And as long as we explore it, we'll understand. You know what? Those 4 things, Scripture, tradition, experience, and reason. That's what the Old Testament writers called wisdom.
Amen.
You know, it's not necessarily an easy thing. It takes a lifelong pursuit sometimes. You know what? For those who seek wisdom, they are eternal students. You thought you were in school and graduated? You're still a student and will be until well beyond this life. That's the way it's intended. Now, if you've got a Pew Bible in front of you, I want to refer you to another passage which comes just before. It helps to tell the tale too. So let's turn, what page did you say that's on?
241.
241. I'm going to read it in mine. Mine is page 1777. Okay, that was 1 John. John, it's a little letter. It's only 5 chapters long. 1 John chapter 5. And Tom read to you beginning with verse 6. I want to read to you beginning with verse 4. Think of this as kind of an introduction to what Tom read. It says in this version, because every child of God is able to defeat the world. Are you a child of God?
Amen.
Are we all children of God?
Amen.
Guess what? We need nothing more to be wonderful successes in this life, and whatever comes in front of us, we will prevail because we are children of God.
Amen.
That's what it says here. There's confidence for our stomachs. He goes on to say, and we win the victory over the world by means of our faith. That's why faith is so important. Who can defeat the world? Only person who believes that Jesus is the Son of God. I want to remind you that believing that Jesus is the Son of God is not just a matter of signing the book, saying, oh, yeah, that's what I believe. and then going about our life the regular kind of way. That's not what he means. He means that believing that Jesus is the Son of God is that it changes our lives. You know, we read it in Scripture. We studied the tradition of the church. We experienced it. And you know, we thought about it afterwards and it made real sense. That's what it means to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And you know, once you've been through that process, not only do we become wiser, but we have a new beginning. And you know, in that case, there is no problem that can present itself that we can't deal with.
Praise the Lord.
We are powerful.
Amen.
Because we have the Spirit of God in our hearts. And we know it because we can feel it. And we know it because we've experienced it before. And we can count on it because anything that comes our way, we can count on the power of God being in our hearts to deal with it. Just ask Flo, she knows that already. And you know, if Flo says it, it's true. So anyway, I give to you this wonderful letter where every sentence makes a really good case. And remember, there's multiple witnesses to what we believe. And there's multiple witnesses that says our future can be bright. In Jesus' name, do I hear amen?
Amen.
All right, thank you very much. We have another